obadwa 100 aliwonse 47 mwa iwo amapezeka ndi vuto lopinimbira.
Maunduna onse aboma, mabungu omwe si aboma, tiyeni tigwire ntchito yopititsa patsogolo kayendedwe kabwino m'mapulani athu.
Mafumu, atsogolera ndale, atsogolera mipingo, tiyeni tilimbikitse ntchito za madyedwe abwino m'madera mwathu.
Special days. Awa ndi masiku oyambirira chikwi chimodzi moyo wa mwana. Kuyambira pamene mayi ayima kufikira mwana obadwayo atakwanitsa zaka ziwiri. Mwana amene sanadye chakudya choyenera nthawi iyi amakhala opinimbira moyo wake wonse. Izi zimabwezera mbuyo kuthekera kwa mwanayo pa ntchito zosiyanasiyana monga maphunziro.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you to take your seats, please.
Mayi amene akukonzekera kukhala ndi pakati akuyenera kudya zakudya zakasintha-sintha kuti akhale ndi moyo wathanzi komanso mwana odzabadwayo adzakhale wathanzi. Amayi oyembekezera adye zakudya zopatsa thanzi zochokera m'magulu onse asanu ndi limodzi.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start, please. Okay, thank you. Okay, we want to start the second session on the topic more nutrition for the money, more money for nutrition. I'm sure it's going to be another great session. We have another top-class panel, and I'm delighted to hand you over to that most accomplished ringmaster, David Nabarro.
Thank you very much, Tom. I want to check. Hello, everybody, again. Thank you for coming in so promptly. Greetings to all of you. I can see my colleague Werner Schulting sitting there. Hello, Werner. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. Welcome to Guatemala in the front row. This is nice to see you again. And Bread for the World. Yeah, there we go. Everybody, Francesco Branca, nice to see you. Good. You're looking very sartorial in Italy. You look Italian. Grazie. Okay, if we could now settle down, take your seats. We're about to start the second panel in our global gathering. And this is a very focused panel. It's about the issue we discussed this morning, how to bring more resources into nutrition, and then, in particular, how to make sure they are well spent. And in fact, the theme of this panel is going to be how to use resources as effectively as possible to get improvements in nutrition. It's going to talk about monitoring expenditure. It's talking about checking to see that expenditure is well used. And it's going to be talking about how to mobilize more resources for nutrition. Now, I'm talking a bit more than I meant to, because as I talk, I see several of you are finding your seats. Please do find your seats. Look for your interpretation machines so that you can hear the different languages, and then get settled down and ready for what will be an interesting session. We will start with two presentations from Adelheid Onyango of the World Health Organization. She's regional advisor for nutrition for the World Health Organization in Africa, in the Brazzaville office. She's going to talk about the global targets for nutritional achievements in our world. And then we're going to hear from Meera Shekar. Meera Shekar is the World Bank Global Lead on Nutrition. And she will give us a presentation on the costs of scaling up nutrition, the impact of scaling up nutrition, and strategies for financing scaling up nutrition. Now that you've all settled, it's my pleasure to get our two presenters to speak. And once they've spoken, I will go to the panel and I will invite them to comment on a number of issues related to financing nutrition. And they will each give very short remarks. I will invite some of you to make comments, and then we will summarize and reach some conclusions. Okay, I can see there's some cues for the interpretation equipment. If you don't mind, we will start. The first two presenters will need their time. And so what I'm going to do is to invite you, Adelheid, to give your presentation. Thank you.
Which one is the one forward? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor for me to be here to give a very brief overview of the global targets on for nutrition that was set out and adopted by the World Health Assembly in 2012, and which we're trying to achieve by 2025. So we will go right to the subject. And on this slide, you see the first three of those targets: stunting among under 5s, anemia in women of reproductive age, and low birth weight. We have where we were in 2012 and where we would like to get by 2025. So the figures are there. I won't read them over, but they're available in all those publications that are very ready to hand. The second set, rather the next three, are with regard to overweight among under 5s, exclusive breastfeeding, and wasting. We see where we were in 2012 and where we'd like to be in 2025. So some progress has been made for sure, and I'm going to focus the comment on where we are on the Global Nutrition Report that was published just a couple of weeks ago. One point that is important to make and has come up in the discussions earlier this morning is that we don't have the data to tell us about everything that's going on. Sorry. Okay, sure. I forgot to change the slide, sorry. We don't have all the data that are necessary for us to really closely track the progress that we are making. We do have a bit more data on the 3 targets that are related to child growth, namely stunting, overweight, and wasting, but much less on maternal anemia, on low birth weight, and on breastfeeding. Now, on the targets where we have data, a brief look at where we are according to the Global Nutrition Report 2015, we can see with regard to stunting that we went from 162 million children in 2012 to 159 in 2014. That number, when we look specifically at the African region, unfortunately, instead of reducing the numbers, they're actually increasing. And considering that 37 of the 55 countries in the SUN movement are on the African continent, we certainly have a lot to do as the SUN movement, but also as everybody else who is interested in nutrition. When we look at wasting, another of our targets, we have several hotspots. We can see in Southern Asia that it's not just above the target, but in fact, it's above the threshold that is a public health concern, an emergency almost. So that is a serious problem. We also have a few more spots where the level of wasting is very close to the public health emergency threshold. And when you look at the African region, for example, we can see that the whole region is way above the target of 5% or less that we are hoping to reach. We still have time, but we have to work hard. Now, when you look at the overweight, another of those global targets, this is a problem that is growing in all regions. The target said not to increase overweight. We were at 7% globally in 2012, but we are increasing. So it's an area that we need to begin to reflect on a lot more deliberately as we talk about malnutrition. So the question has been asked, should we set a target on nutrition spending as a share of national budgets? So a figure, a minimum figure for nutrition spending, should that be something that we aim to do? It's definitely important to think of targets, but I think there are 3 points that come to my mind, and they're not the only important points, that need to be kept on the table as part of that important discussion. One of them is we have seen the situation according to the regions, but when we look at specific countries, of course we have inter-country variation in the magnitude as well as the profiles of malnutrition. So a single figure in terms of targets for spending probably will not address all the specific issues that are relevant to each of the countries. And then the second point that needs to be kept on the discussion table is the discussion about the double burden of malnutrition. As we have seen, looking at the previous slide, overweight among under 5s is increasing. So there needs to be a balancing of investments so that we address both undernutrition and the growing problem of overweight among children, and of course it continues into adulthood, that is affecting not just the countries that have low undernutrition rates, but also the regions like the African region that has very high undernutrition rates. And finally, it matters where and what the spending goes towards. This morning we heard about Mariama, but we could also spend nutrition funds on refurbishing the offices of the Directorate of Nutrition at Capitol. We need to think where the money is going, and we need to think what it is being spent on. It's a question of equity, it's a question of justice, and as Dr. Nabarro mentioned this morning, reaching those who are hard to reach. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for summarizing the issues, but also for those last 3 points, which are really hitting the button. Perfect. And now to Meera Shekar. You have your presentation time now. I think this controls from that gadget.
Yeah, I do.
See if it works.
If somebody can put the slides on. Oh, brilliant.
Okay, I think it's that green thing.
Yes, sir. Got it. Thank you, David. And what I will try and do is share with you some very initial results around costing and financing of the global targets that Adelheid just spoke about. Before I share the results, let me just mention a couple of things. First, this work has been done by the World Bank in partnership with Results for Development, and colleagues from R4D are here to answer any difficult questions you want to raise. It's also being done in partnership with 1,000 Days, the wonderful advocacy group that has helped us take our nerdy messages and make them more understandable, and in partnership with SIF, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So this is really a joint effort. Let's see. Okay, for some reason, there we go. Okay. So you saw the 6 targets, global targets that Adelheid just spoke about. The work that we are doing covers 4 of those targets, not all 6, partially because data are not available for some of them. And what I will share with you today are preliminary results for only 1 of those global targets, which is stunting. If you look at the distribution of stunting, and Adelheid already started that earlier, you see that stunting is distributed, the burden of stunting in terms of prevalence is distributed across the world. But if you hone into this a little more carefully, actually the burden, 85% of this stunting burden, 85% of the children with stunting live in 37 countries. And so much of the work that is being done is focusing on these 37 countries, but not forgetting some of the smaller countries that may be small as far as the global burden is concerned, but they are very important because prevalence rates for stunting are very high over there. So in fact, we've looked at 50 countries that contribute to the stunting estimates here. Just to remind ourselves, things that were said earlier this morning in the panels, the issues around human capital. We want to invest in nutrition, not just because it's a good thing to do, but because it really is an investment in human capital, something that will drive economies and help boost shared prosperity. And whether it is in terms of improving schooling, improving earnings. We all know early nutrition programs improve earnings by between 5 to 50%, or in terms of reducing poverty and driving economies. So this is the main reason why we are so focused on this agenda. Our initial estimates suggest that we have an affordable package of interventions that can reduce stunting. And this is a sort of summarized version of that package, which costs approximately $8.50 per child of additional financing. And I want to emphasize the term additional, over and above what countries are spending at the moment. I also want to emphasize another point that David made at the beginning of this session, which is that this package is based on efficiency, what we refer to as technical efficiency. You will get the results that you're hoping to get if you invest in these evidence-based interventions, not if you just invest, as Adelheid was saying, in updating the Director of Nutrition's office or any other similar investments. This, if you add it up for the $8.50 over the 37 countries, it's $42 billion over the 50 countries that I mentioned. We are talking roughly $50 billion additional financing that will be needed globally over 10 years. Now, the question that gets asked is, okay, so if you get your $50 billion, what are we going to buy with that? So next slide, just to remind ourselves what impacts we can buy with those results, so long as we focus on the technical efficiency. Adelheid reminded us in 2012, 2013, we have 162 million stunted children in the world. By 2025, the target is to reduce it to 100 million children. Evidence shows that if we invest in the underlying determinants of stunting, and those are some of the things that people often refer to as nutrition-sensitive interventions, whether it is increasing incomes, food availability, food diversity, women's education, health, empowerment, so on and so forth. If we do that, we will achieve some of the impact that we are looking for. But if you notice over here, this is where the target is, and this is where we've reached with those investments. So clearly, something more is needed beyond that. And that something more is what we refer to as the nutrition-specific interventions. And if we invest in that package of high-impact nutrition-specific interventions, we expect that we can actually achieve the target by 2025. We will have 74 million fewer children stunted by that time. And if we look at resource requirements for that, we think about $16 billion in the first 5 years of the scale-up and $34 billion for the next 5 years. So this is sort of the roadmap of the resources that are needed to achieve the global targets that Adelheid spoke about. And just as a reminder, every dollar invested in stunting reduction will give us $18 in economic returns. If we look at where we are going to get that money, if we look at what is being spent currently, the annual expenditures that are being made at the moment are a little less than $3 billion a year. What our estimates tell us is that we need $9 billion a year. David, 2 more minutes. Actually, 1 more minute. So this is where we are, and this is where we need to get to. This is the last slide. In the scale-up phase, we need, as I said, to add billions over here. We are starting from 2.9 billion, which is the current investments over here. We need to start scaling up the investments. As we scale up the investments, in the initial phases, we believe that a realistic scenario is that donors provide more resources. So you see these yellow bars over here, which is additional donor resources scaling up over here. And the blue bars over here are the additional domestic resources, and then household resources. And on top of that, the green one are the innovative sources that you will hear about as we proceed with this panel. The only thing I want to leave you with here is that in the first 5 years of the scale-up phase, the onus will be on the donors, but in the next 5 years of the scale-up phase, the onus really needs to be on domestic financing, because domestic finances takes some more time to scale up. And if we are able to garner these resources, then we certainly can achieve the targets that Adelheid set out. Thank you.
Meera, thank you very much indeed. To you and your colleagues, you described this as a piece of collective work. It's very powerful, it's very focused, and it does show that it's both domestic and external financing that needs to be increased. And we've got an excellent panel now to reflect on some of these points. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Kofi Ahutu of Côte d'Ivoire. He is the focal point for SUNGG in the cabinet of the Prime Minister. And you're going to talk a bit about your government spending. You can do it from there, Kofi, it saves time. Okay. There you go. Thank you.
Merci. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, la question du financement.
So the financings are fundamental for the efforts that we have to do in terms of nutrition. One of the challenges of the SUNGG movement, in our opinion, is precisely to be able to play the role as a catalyst in mobilizing resources on the part of member countries. For instance, in my country, the stake is the financing of multi-sectoral panel on nutrition that has just been validated by all the stakeholders with a cost of $500 billion spread over 5 years, 2016-2020. And this is why I would like to mention at this point some key elements for the success of this mobilization. So therefore, first of all, the appropriateness of the multi-sectorial approach in terms of the convergence of policies. It is fundamental. Policies must be good in order to be able to stir the interest of the financing parties, and that was the first point. Second point, the strength and credibility of the governance and accountability as well. And this is something that must be able to guarantee results on the basis of sound skills, abilities, especially in terms of the reliability of the evaluation system and also in terms of the strategies to be implemented from a political viewpoint. And we do believe that we will be able to do so with the financings which are already available. Third point, the participation of all the stakeholders to the financing of the multi-sectorial plan. Since they have contributed to create it, they should recognize in it and be able to finance it gladly. The 15% of this plan over 5 years is represented by a budget of Côte d'Ivoire, and the money is taken from the budget already available, and there's an action plan which is going to guarantee results that are reached jointly. So we want to have a better productivity in terms of the financial resources. And then we have also PPPs in the field of agricultural transformation, cultural production, to mobilize more private financing or funding. So we have to reflect on the opportunity of setting up global funds, sectoral funds, on the basis of modalities that need to be defined yet. We need also an effective support on the part of the United Nations, on the part of the donors, as well as other institutions, in order to be able to face this kind of financing. Thank you very much.
Very clear presentation. Convergence of policies among different stakeholders and sectors, credible governance, engagement of all actors with targeting and innovative finance. Very, very kind of you to give us those pieces of suggestion based on your experience. Teferu Lema, SUNGG focal point in Ethiopia. He's in the Ministry of Health, and he serves as the REACH coordinator. Feru, that should work.
Well, thank you, David.
Talk loud.
I'll talk about the Sekota Declaration, which is a commitment of the government of Ethiopia to end child undernutrition by 2030. This declaration aims to transform the lives of people, or Ethiopians in general, through developments in agriculture, health, education, water, sanitation and hygiene, as well as social protection and climate change, more focused on climate-sensitive agriculture and climate-sensitive food systems. And at the center of this declaration is child development, but at the core, within its core is nutrition. So everybody working, all the sectors working to address their sector agendas, but at the end deliver for child development through nutrition. But we have seen these over the last few years. We have done well, but the principles in the Sekota Declaration are focused on 4 areas. One is new thinking, or new thinking in terms of we are not going to do business as usual, and we are not going to do what we have been doing up to now, and there needs to be new thinking around agriculture and education, how we address the various challenges within the various sectors. Secondly, we have to change the whole mindset of people or communities. Everybody has to understand and work on stunting, and particularly preach the 1,000 days. That's what we are thinking. The second area is data revolution and knowledge management, because all the information we have been getting and collecting was not enough for us to make decisions to be, if we are to see if we are on track or not. And third is partnership around the zero undernutrition challenge. And everybody, it is ambitious, and yes, we think we can do it, and everybody, our partners, new and existing, hopefully would come around this through aggressive advocacy, but as well as resource mobilization. And finally, one of the main principles is gender-focused, as well as addressing equity. There are various challenges within our regions and within our districts, and this will be addressed. It's not only the most vulnerable, but also those who are different population groups, the adolescents, as well as the other, which we are naming this morning, the grandmothers. In terms of financing, we think the government has reaffirmed that it will use all its resources to end child undernutrition. So we hope the domestic resources we have now will double in the next few years, but also match these government or domestic resources with innovative financing resources as well as donor finances. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Pharaoh's saying that there is a very definite new strategic thinking, investing in climate-sensitive food systems, new mindset, including at community level, a data revolution, a partnership for zero malnutrition, it's gender-focused, and there's a big equity element into it, and it's all brought together in the Sekota Declaration, which is a national declaration for investment in ending malnutrition. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Juliana Lunguzi, you're Member of Parliament for Dedza East, you're Chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Health, you're an active midwife, helpful in case any of us need assistance, and you are going to give us your views on domestic resource mobilization from the parliamentary perspective.
Thank you very much. Indeed, for the parliamentarians, we all agreed this morning the importance of political wills. How important is it for the parliamentarians to understand the issues on nutrition so that we can do the right advocacy when it comes to resource allocation in the budget. So for Malawi, as an example, one of the things that we focus on as members of parliament is to make sure that we have the right data, the right information, so that we can advocate for the resources for the nutrition component. And here, we want to make sure that nutrition resources, they're not only focusing on agriculture, but the health sector is also getting something, the local government, the Ministry of Agenda. So our role is to make sure that during our cluster meetings, before the budget is allocated, these are the issues that we need to focus on, and to make sure that we go as closer, although we are still struggling on that part, to reach the London Summit commitment of about 0.3% 15% of the whole national budget. You know, everybody wants their whole 15% for health, 8% for education. So we want to make sure that this is something that we also want to focus on. And the other thing that we also do as members of parliament throughout the year is to make sure that we track the resources right from policy level. As somebody rightly put it, we want to make sure to see where are the resources going, not only renovating the offices, but what is the district level funding towards nutrition. And what is it that we are doing at local level? Because when it comes to nutrition, if you can't make an impact at household level, it's very difficult to see what is it that we do. And as a health sector, we realize that 59% of the expenditure in health sector, it's because of undernutrition. So understanding of this and lobbying for nutrition is quite important. And the other second important thing that we are working on in Malawi, we used to do very well. We had a good coordinating system, the 3 1s. Our nutrition unit was based in the President's office, and Uganda today shine. They did come to Malawi and learn something from us. Today they are shining. But we have gone back because of change of government. Now we have gone back. The nutrition is in the health sector. We have medicalized it. So we are making sure that we go back, let it go to the right place, not to medicalize, and make sure that it's coordinating well in all the other sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Data for advocacy, so you can make a noise. All relevant sectors engaged, tracking the money, check that it's being spent and spent properly, look for local as well as national impact, and try to maintain it through a government change. Thanks again for your fantastic work. And now to Martin Short from the Power of Nutrition. Martin, look forward to your contributions on catalytic external resource mobilization.
Thank you, David. The Power of Nutrition is a new charitable foundation that has been set up by the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, the UK government, UBS Optimus, and using the World Bank and UNICEF as their implementing partners. We all recognize the desperate need that we have to increase and attract further funds for nutrition. And it is my job and the job of the team that work with me to arrest the private sector. Sadly, underrepresented here, and I hope that will change. But what we wish to do in the Power of Nutrition is to attract new money from the private sector. The Power of Nutrition will then double that, and we will work with UNICEF and the World Bank to further double that money again to a 4 times matching commitment for all nutrition-specific interventions in country. We have hotspots. We have a hotspot in Tanzania where we have already invested significant funds. There will be 5 to 10 further hotspots, and you'll probably ask me what those are, and I will tell you that it is this. Those countries that show both political will and financial commitment to nutrition will receive funding. The IDA money that is granted by the World Bank, if you push that IDA money into nutrition-specific interventions, the Power of Nutrition will double it. So the last thing I would say in terms of efficiency, for us to be able to engage the private sector, we have to show that we're efficient in the way that we invest that money. We cannot expect those sort of individuals to come in, those corporates and institutions, unless that we can show that the money that they are giving us is invested wisely for impact at scale and is cost effective. Thank you, David.
So thank you very much, Martin. Very much an effort here to catalyze investment through offering to double and then double it again if it's properly focused, used efficiently, and delivering results. And you're telling us that unless those kinds of assurances can be there, it's hard to get the private sector money. Thanks again. And now to Ian McGillivray, who's Special Advisor to the President of the International Fund for Agriculture Development, to talk a bit about the links between agriculture systems and nutrition and financing those links.
Thank you, David. I will speak to, as David mentions, to nutrition-sensitive agriculture. Just to make sure that everybody knows what the acronym IFAD means, it is the International Fund for Agricultural Development. We're one of the 3 Rome-based agencies, and we behave in terms of our financing as an IFI. We provide loans and grants to our members and to different organizations. Now, the first point I'd like to talk about amongst 3 in terms of first, our mainstreaming efforts at nutrition, where we're leveraging our budget towards nutrition. Second, I'd like to talk a little bit about incentives, and last, quickly, about costs. We are extremely excited about the work that we're doing on mainstreaming over the last year and a half, 2 years at IFAD. We have increased our capacity, and we hope that the funding that we leverage every year, which is an additional $1 billion a year beyond our $1 billion of loans and grants every year, can commence to be nutrition sensitive. We have commitments already to our members through our replenishment last year, and in that sense, we are moving towards institutionalizing the term that's been used here, nutrition within our organization. Interestingly, we work in the 55 SUNGG countries in terms of agriculture and rural development, and there are already approaches of meeting together with the SUNGG representatives and coordinators. I must say to you, though, that we have 2 specific challenges. One is, I think we need to do a better job in terms of a nutrition community, in terms of the metrics and indicators for assessing both food systems and agricultural performance. Our second challenge is that it's fine that we mainstream nutrition, as we do with gender and climate change, within our organization. But the capacities for mainstreaming are in countries. They're not just in the organizations that work with you. So resources are needed not only for us to do our work, which we will do with our own internal resources, and Canada is helping us mainstream as an institution, but the capacity, the resources that are needed to mainstream nutrition in countries is essential. And I think there's a point in the Global Nutrition Report that says specifically, without that capacity, a lot of investment is for naught. Let me just touch on 2 quick points, and one is on incentives. And without mentioning the point that Martin raised, we allocate resources in IFAD through a performance-based allocation system. And we are looking very closely at balancing not only the needs for nutrition, but also the performance. And countries that put forward action plans is something that we're trying to integrate, action plans on nutrition, to be aligned fully with the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. They will be then also rewarded in terms of allocation. And the last point on costs, totally open and agree that we need to do much better in terms of assessing what it costs us. Our climate change colleagues say that 10% of all their investments, it's what it costs to be able to mainstream climate change for adaptation. What will it cost for nutrition? We're working on it. We don't have a figure to give you.
Thanks very much, Ian. Thanks for stressing that you are able to mainstream nutrition into your portfolio and that you're committed to your members to do that. But there are challenges with measuring performance and also with the capacity in countries to do this. And you are looking all the time at maximizing performance and getting the cost estimates right. These are very valuable points. And now to Alison Milton, who's in charge of humanitarian aid, climate, nutrition, and other aspects of resilience in the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs, what's sometimes known as Irish Aid. Alison, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, David.
You're on.
It's on. Okay, very good. Good afternoon, everybody. As David said, I'm from Ireland, which is a relatively small donor country. And last week, the government decided to give us our first increase in overseas development assistance for the last 7 years. And that was a 7% increase, 40 million euros. And I was really pleased about that until I put it in the context of what Meera presented today of the need for an additional $40 billion over the next 10 years. And what I really hear loud and clear inside my own head right now is that donor funding isn't enough. So when I'm negotiating with ministers and we're negotiating with the government in terms of getting an increase in donor assistance, I need to be able to spell out to him where there is surge capacity, and I use that term pointedly in terms of actually leveraging, where donors can leverage additional resources to meet this massive need that my colleagues have set out. And there's 3 areas that I would like to mention today. 2 have already been mentioned by my fellow panelists. One is the whole issue of how donors can leverage additional resources from the private sector. And I think we have some really good examples of that, but it does need and does involve donors stepping out of their normal ways of doing business, their normal boxes, and taking some risks and actually identifying opportunities. We had a very good example, just to mention very quickly, in Malawi, where we worked with the government and private sector sugar company, Ilovo, around the whole issue of fortification. Through diplomatic engagement, through some seed capital, we managed to work on the whole issue of fortification of sugar, which is now in law in Malawi. The second area where there's a lot of interest, say from politicians in donor countries, is the whole issue of domestic resource mobilization, also mentioned by my colleagues, and in particular the area of social protection. We have a lot of good examples now of donor programs which have scaled up enormously into government-funded social protection programs. There is a lot of potential for nutritional outcomes. So we need to see that money, that additional allocations towards social protection, as again additional resources in terms of delivering nutritional outcomes. But the third area and the final area, just to emphasize with my other hat on, as David said, I'm the Director of Humanitarian Aid, and as we all know, we are currently facing an unprecedented crisis in terms of humanitarian need. We have nearly 60 million people displaced out of their homes. 60 to 70% of those at least are from protracted crisis. So how do we look at this huge amount of need and also a huge amount of additional funding that is going towards humanitarian assistance? How do we look at that again in terms of future nutritional outcomes? There are multifaceted, multi-agency responses to communities that are living over long periods, protracted periods in refugee camps, etc. And how do we look to that money in terms of future nutritional outcomes? Thank you very much.
Thanks. I hope that all these presentations have shown you just how much the issues of looking at the impact of existing spending and ways of maximizing the value of existing spending is important when trying to mobilize more, and how the donors, particularly, whatever they come from, are looking for ways to try to get more impact of the money, even when they're providing donor assistance. They use this term leveraging, which you heard from several in presentations just now. Lots of food for thought. I'm going to invite some comments now from all of you. I know somebody who I know would be interested to speak, but I'm looking for that person, a young man called Robert. Are you here, Robert? Robert, where are you? Okay, you need to have a microphone. So if you could stand up. Robert works for a group called Results for Development, who's done a lot of work on this. And if you could give us a very short remark now, that would be great. You're on.
Is this working? Sorry, is this working?
Yeah, just talk loudly.
Okay, good. Good. I'm not so young, but thank you, David, for the compliment. David, since we've been working very closely with the World Bank and 1,000 Days on this...
Look at the audience. Yep.
Thank you. On this costing and financing exercise, I just wanted to say that we're so delighted to see a session here at this event focus on financing of nutrition, and in particular on strategic objective number 4 in the new Sun movement strategy. Just seems extremely important. And when I look at the indicators that have been adopted under strategic objective 4, they seem to align, David, perfectly with what we've heard over the last few minutes. The first indicator relates to estimating this resource gap that Meera mentioned, and then finding a way to mobilize the resources to fill that gap. And we're talking billions, not millions or hundreds of millions. I see the Sun movement now raising its level of ambition to where the HIV movement and other comparable movements have been and have come from over the past decade and a half. And I think there's a lot to learn from other such movements. The fourth indicator is the one around burden sharing, which all of the panelists have talked about. And for the first time, David, I believe you know this from your work with Sun, this is the first time we have benchmarks for what normative benchmarks for what donors and what countries should be pushing for in the way of the share of their health budgets, 4% of their health budgets, and 4% of ODA going to health. If we can mobilize that kind of money, we can fill that gap. It's not beyond our reach. And lastly, one of the indicators, and I think in some ways the most important one, is the call to set up a permanent system for reporting and monitoring and accountability. It's one thing for Meera and the World Bank and ourselves to do a one-off measurement of how much is being spent, but if we're going to sustain this movement and achieve these goals, then we need to have a permanent system to track how much is being spent, where it's going, how efficiently it's being spent, and to get accountability of all the parties. So we certainly look forward to working with everyone, both with the governments and with the donors, to try to see that all of these objectives and all of these indicators are implemented over the next decade. Thank you, David.
Thank you for helping us along with others. Give him a hand. That was a nice thing. Thank you for helping us to get our sights with the right level of ambition. Rob, that was very helpful. Now, Ira Hetnas is here from the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, another group that's trying to mainstream and highlight nutrition in their work. If you could look at the audience while you speak, that helps the photography.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. So GAFSP is a grant
You have to talk louder.
Okay. GAFSP is a grant funding mechanism with broad participation, including IFAD, Ireland, and the World Bank, that up to today has provided financing to 30 countries to implement their own strategies in agriculture, food security, and nutrition. All of our projects are country-led. As of December 2014, 59% of our project portfolio, that is 19 out of our 32 projects, includes activities on nutrition. That is both nutrition specific, such as breastfeeding campaigns, and nutrition sensitive interventions, such as biofortification of crops. And this amounts to about $138 US million. By enabling countries to implement their own strategies, through this additional and complementary financing, we empower them to tackle their own challenges in ways they view best, including through investments in nutrition. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ara. We really acknowledge the work that you and your colleagues have done to bring nutrition more strongly into the work of your funding mechanism. We say the same to the International Fund for Agriculture Development. Now, we could invite one or two comments from people in the audience. So first of all, Madam from Costa Rica. Secondly, Sir from Pakistan. We won't have time for many more. Please keep your comments very short.
Mi comentario es que Costa Rica en niños, en adolescentes.
Malnutrition is an issue, and obesity is a big issue. 62% of the adult population is obese, and 21.2% of children are obese and overweight. Therefore, we achieved some success regarding denutrition, but we have still issues with anemia. However, regarding obesity, there are no resources, there is no serious policies to help the investment, to support the investment we are making in order to fight obesity. So please, SUNGG movement, we really need your help. Just as we need to fight denutrition, we need to fight and eradicate obesity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Now to the front row, please.
Thank you. My name is Basir Khan. I am from Pakistan. Pakistan is the second largest country among the global the Sun Network countries. So therefore, it is very important to listen to us and to advise us as well. I was just talking with Dr. David Nabarro that the most important initiative which we have taken, started in Pakistan, is to take on board the parliamentarians. And without the parliamentarians or the political leadership, the ownership at government level or political commitment is impossible. And because the resources allocation is in the hand of the political leadership. And also, I will emphasize on the role of all the networks, the academia, the civil society, the UN agencies, and the networks which are working in Pakistan, especially, to work together with an approach to listen to the government policies as well, and to support by making the policies of the government as well. Because the rationalization and the rational use of the government resources even is very important. We have been experiencing that delays in the government expenditures are hindering in the achievement of our goals. And secondly, I was just talking to two ladies who came to on my stall, that the woman role in parliament is nowadays in Pakistan is very crucial, because out of 350 parliamentarians, there are 90 plus ladies, first time in history of Pakistan, who is Islamic countries, where their voice is a lot up to say. They can become a player of change in all nutrition related policies, which starts from the mother, in my opinion, and which ends on the mother health. So therefore, I urge the UN agencies, all the partners, all the networks to work together to support in the government in their policies making and then in their implementation as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, we are so short of time, and you're standing and you're going to speak, but super short.
Я представляю Кыргызскую республику. Представитель
Well, the Ministry of Agriculture, and while before entering the SUNGG network, a traditional assessment was simply from the Ministry of Health, as was said previously by the government representative. We have set up a program to ensure nutrition. All the speeches we've heard regarding the fact that we need to promote agriculture, well, I would simply say, voice my opinion, that is, the SUNGG movement must be very focused on agriculture development, to sustain and support inhabitants in rural regions so that they can have access to good nutrition. And our objective is really to try and define well-defined investment zones.
I am going to have to stop now because we are actually up to the limit on our time. I'm just going to invite everybody sitting here to make one remark in half a minute. If we can make a big noise, Ambassador Gornas had to leave. Goodbye, Ambassador. I can see you waiting. We're just going to give you a clap. She heard us. That was lovely. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Adelheid, could you try to do half a minute, please?
Sure. Well, I think we are looking at the double burden of malnutrition, and it's going to be important that we keep in sight the fact that we could invest on one side and have to pay for it by treating the problems that come because we neglected the other extreme. The Costa Rica speaker made that point, and I think it's a point that needs to be made by more people so that we take it on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much for stressing that point. To Meera Shekar.
Thank you, David. So I'm going to make two very quick points. First, let's look at the money that is already there in the countries and see how we can achieve results. Let me give an example specifically of Ethiopia in this case and social protection. Ethiopia is a country where donors have collectively committed is it 3.2 or $3.6 billion for social protection. 10% of that is allocated to nutrition. And we need to make sure that that actually happens. Second thing to say, that several countries have asked us to come and help them cost their multi-sectoral plans. We're happy to work with the countries to do that, but given what was said here today, we need to make sure how we prioritize actions within those multi-sectoral plans to cost and finance the activities that will get the results that we're looking for.
Thank you very much, Meera. Kofi. You are on. That's right.
In a word, I'd like to say the following. The players' expectation is based on trust. They need trust. We have to create conditions of confidence and trust and create mechanisms whereby we can work together. So this is fundamental, we have been told. A multi-sectorial plan has been launched, but the making, is it going to be really multi-sectorial? How to stick to this commitment to cooperation? How to get together to the results? Through trust.
It says the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. So if you want to sustain the changes we have made, as well as add some more gains in terms of nutrition and see a better world for children, I think it's time to invest and start to end malnutrition now. So I challenge fellow country focal points, SUNGG focal points, to go ahead and be ambitious and go to the Zero Hunger Challenge.
Ambitious and go for the end. Thank you. For zero. Okay.
Coordination, very important. The resources are not many, but if you coordinate, you leverage, you can see more. And again, poverty is there, but nutrition, we can decrease it. Our economies will be better. We can finance our SDGs better and make noise, be visible. We need to know that nutrition is there and it's functioning. Thank you.
Martin.
If it's so important, why aren't we pushing for Ministry of Nutrition? And I think next year I would love to see 5 countries stand up and say that they have a Ministry of Nutrition. Secondly, the good news is this whole thing is self-financing. From a banking perspective, let me tell you how. It is amazing how much money we are putting into the system between the ages of 5 to 20 years old to assist those afflicted with cognitive and physical stunting.
Yeah.
If we invest heavily in the first 1,000 days, within a matter of a few years, we are going to be able to look back and say, actually, it didn't cost us any money at all.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely. Ian.
Okay, very quickly, I think the representative from Costa Rica and the gentleman from Kyrgyzstan, the former specifically referred to the double burden. Let's recognize that the work that we're doing to diversify production, making value change nutrition sensitive, and extending diet diversity for consumption, whether it's at the individual, household, or food system level, will make a major contribution eventually with behavioral change towards both burdens.
Thank you very much.
Last word from me. I think it's really clear following this discussion that we can achieve more resources. We need to work together. We need to understand and see the opportunities as they arise, and we need to convince our political leaders and leaders in other parts of our society about the focus on nutritional outcomes, and that even if it's not necessarily targeted initially at nutrition, it can have a huge impact in terms of political or nutritional outcomes. Thank you.
Alison, thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we've slightly overshot the time, but let me tell you what we've concluded. Firstly, that the targets are doable. There needs to be greater emphasis on the double burden. We know how much it costs. We know what the benefits can be. And we see that a combination of nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive action can certainly yield the stunting goal by 2025. Tom, I'm sorry, I should be looking at you. On the domestic scale, we need coordinated action across the sectors and trust in credible government that's capable of prioritizing interventions, with all actors fully engaged and supportive, and very good data to back it. Parliamentarians can help if they are informed and if they see results, especially in relation to women, and if the cash that's being spent is properly tracked. Sometimes that is valuable if there is legal codes to guide what happens at country level, and of course if civil society is fully involved. From the outside, external investors are always looking for impact, for efficient ways of achieving that impact, for results, and for opportunities to use their cash to leverage more investment by others. They're also looking for ways to leverage better ways for investment in specific sectors like agriculture or investment in the food system to yield nutrition. They're concerned about climate change and want to see climate-sensitive investments. All the time, the outsiders are saying, can we show that access improves and that results improve on multiple burdens, not just on undernutrition? One commentator says it's important. Why is there not a ministerial function? And he also made the point that if you invest in nutrition, you get the rewards very quickly because a well-nourished population is a more productive population. There was much more. We've recorded it. We'll try to give you a fuller report, and that's on behalf of you. I would like, please, to give the strongest possible gratitude to this fantastic panel as they now go back to their seats and Tom Arnold takes over for the next part of the proceedings. Good evening.
David, thank you very much again. Excellent session. We're now going to move to the if you like, the rest of the day, and the rest of the day is going to consist of discussions within the individual SUN network, SUN networks. The SUN networks are a very innovative aspect of our movement, and I think they work well in general, and this is an opportunity this afternoon for them to come together and to arrive at certain suggestions and conclusions. In terms of location, the Civil Society Network will meet in Amber Room 1 to 2, the Donor Network in Amber 3 and 4, the UN Network in Amber 5 and 6, the Government Representatives meeting in Amber 7 and 8, and the Business Network in Brown. Now, I just want to put this afternoon's discussions in some context. You all are aware of and have received the draft SUN strategy for the next 5 years, from 2016 to 2020. It is a draft strategy. It necessarily is written at a certain high level of generality and principle. But to translate it into a practical way forward will require what we call a roadmap. And this roadmap will be worked on over the coming months by the Secretariat, by the SUN Executive Committee, by the network facilitators, and obviously by myself as coordinator. But we would like to use your presence here over the next 3 days to get guidance and priority as to what will be in this roadmap. And that is really a core part of what we want you to focus on over the next 4 hours. As I said, the Executive Committee, which has just been established and had its first formal face-to-face meeting at lunchtime, the members of the Executive Committee will be within all of these network groups. The Executive Committee is chaired by Sean Baker, Vice Chair Adelheid. And we have a very talented group of people in that Executive Committee. So they will be there, the eyes and ears, listening and able to report back on the discussions that take place in the SUN networks this afternoon. I would repeat again the focus, the questions that I think would be most productive to have in mind when these discussions are taking place. I already said them this morning. I'll say them again. Number one, for SUN, as we move into the next 5 years, what ambition should we collectively have? Secondly, how can we, each and all, contribute to the achievements of the SUN movement? Third, what do we need from others to make our contribution more effective? There are other people, other groups, movements working to improve nutrition in somewhat different ways than SUN. How do we connect most effectively with them? And finally, and touching on the issues that were already mentioned here in this panel, how will we measure progress and account for our contributions? So that's our suggestion as to the framework in which you may have your discussions this afternoon. We will resume in the morning at 9 o'clock sharp for what I think will be a very important and stimulating plenary session on the empowerment of women and girls across the SUN movement. And finally, could I just again remind everybody that at the end of the day you'll be working hard until 7 o'clock, and then there'll be a little time to relax. And that relaxation, at least one option for relaxation this evening, is to attend the side event organised by Sight and Life, and again, which will start at 7:30 p.m. this evening and go on till 9 o'clock this evening. And there will be, as I mentioned earlier, a limited number of buses leaving from outside the entrance of the convention centre here. So if you haven't already registered for that reception, it's possible to do so at the SUN Business Network Marketplace booth. So you have another nice coffee break for interacting, talking and whatever else, and I would encourage you to go to your respective rooms and start the discussions at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed.
Bawe, 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 bawe. Denkisi la ba muso ye. Ibe na kono ta karo kono do karo